I'm so excited to welcome to our stage Vien Truong. And Vien is a longtime friend and colleague and someone who has taught me a lot over the years from her leadership. And we're going to have a conversation about the fact that you have worn different hats across multiple sectors. And I think in this time, we're seeing all of these solutions and how many ways in which it's helpful to understand how you do systems change from philanthropy to government policy work. So can you give us a little bit of background on yourself and how did you get started and how did you get involved? Yep.
Also, I love that we're doing this conversation together, and it feels like because we are friends, you guys are coming into our living rooms, and I just have to say kudos to you. Congratulations for 10 years of Sun Valley.
Thank you.
This is amazing.
Thank you.
And what an honor to be on stage with you, because I mean the community you have curated, everyone in this room who can have their own talks, because they're such experts. And the beauty of this not only is sharing what they've learned and what they've been doing, but also afterwards, how we're going to be building together. I see the magic you've created. It's not by accident. So thank you for bringing us together.
Thank you.
Yeah. I will say for me, it's a particular honor because folks who grew up in communities that I grew up in don't get to come into these rooms very often. You know, I grew up, I was born in a refugee camp. Let me start there. I'm the youngest of 11 kids. And my mom was just about my age when she was getting on a rickety boat in Vietnam, fleeing bombs and getting her way here as part of the boat people migration. And for me, when we first came to the US, we only could find jobs working on farms. So we were migrant farm workers, picking strawberries and snow peas. And when we graduated out of that, my grandma had dementia and we had to find community to help take care of her. And so we went to Oakland, California. My parents had just come from Vietnam. They had no idea that there was a crack epidemic happening in Oakland. They had no idea they had just fled a war in Vietnam, only to come and arrive on the war on drugs. And navigating that with 10 kids who were running the streets, right? My oldest sister had already been married. And for us, how did we actually figure out how to transition? We didn't. I had brothers and nephews and friends who went in and out of jails. Most of my sisters never graduated high school. I was the only one in my family of 11 kids to go to college. And when I went to college, it was the first time I saw what could be on the other side. I went to Cal Berkeley, which is not that far away. I know there's some Bears here, right? Yes, go Bears. Oakland is just on the other side. It's a 10-minute drive from Berkeley. But when you go to Berkeley, it almost could be another world. You have grassy knolls. I was excited about the salad bar. I didn't know there was such a thing. I'd been raised on government trees. And I saw the significant difference. You know, I was on the board of the California Endowment. What we learned from our research and studies on health, we had focused on individual health, but what we saw in community health was even more significant. We found research that said your zip code is a better determinant of your life expectancy than your genetic code. And when I grew up, the neighborhood I was in, Fruitvale, it was sandwiched between two highways, and we had busy cars, drayage trucks going by at all times. These are like refineries on wheels. They're spewing out particulate matter from their tailpipes. They're getting into the hearts, into the lungs, and into the hearts of our kids, our elders, causing heart disease for older people, causing asthma for younger people. It's led to higher deaths for adults than car accidents. Car pollution is a higher result of car deaths than car accidents. And then for kids, when I was growing up, 1 out of every 28 kids in my classroom had asthma, 1 out of 28. Now you have kids setting off, alarms, metal alarm detectors in schools because of how many asthma inhalers they have in their pockets. And we're dealing with the climate, and we're also having to deal with what the environment around us looks like. So I got into this work because I saw when I went to Berkeley there could be another way. And how do we make sure that communities like Oakland can actually begin the transition to living healthier and longer lives? Yeah.
So what did the start of that work look like?
So I thought that everything was, this is actually, when I started in Oakland, it was the home of Black Panthers, right? It was the home of, the progressive radical space. And it was all about direct service. Mm-hmm. And I worked in community. I eventually went to law school. I was a community lawyer, passed a bunch of policies and laws, ended up, going onto the planning commission. So I was successful in a small little pond. And what I saw was no matter how much I did, the state would do something and it would change all of our, hopes. And the big money was at the state level. And so I started working at the state level. But everybody in Oakland was like, you can't go at the state level. You can't leave the community. This is, it was almost like a betrayal, like going from the grassroots into the state level. But at the state level, I ended up working with our friend Van Jones, who took me under his wings. Yes, we got some fans here. Van. Yes. So he mentored me for 10 years, and he taught me about this vision he had about green jobs and the green economy and creating solutions at the intersection of environment and economy. We were working on green for all, green not for some, but for all. And yes, okay. And how do we make sure that we were actually the trillions of dollars that Christy talked about that was happening in the green space, the amount of money that we're seeing moving now into climate, how do we make sure we don't leave people like Oakland folks and friends behind, right? Mm-hmm. How do we make sure, yes, that we help them get not just to the table, but create and convene and build their own tables as well? And how do we bring those tables into Oakland? And so I passed 20-something laws. I helped with Green for All. We passed the first Green Jobs Act. We helped move billions of dollars in the stimulus from Obama. I helped to shape cap and trade that you worked on. I feel like this is a friend couch living room. Oh my God, okay, we're gonna pick up on after this. But AB 32, it was a huge slog, 2006.
California global warming bill, for those of you who don't speak policy wonk.
Which Wade also talked about. So there's alums here. And then I helped on Proposition 32 to defend 23 to defend Proposition 32, and there, met Tom and others who were part of this work. Tom Steyer. We'll circle back to that. But I cut my teeth running and creating green jobs. Ended up running and creating even more across the country as the CEO and president for Van Jones. And then my friend Tom Steyer decided to run for president. And he said, hey, Vien, would you want to come on board and help me write my climate platform? So I was one of the two people who wrote his climate platform, which was...
And it was a model.
And right? It was a model.
It inspired others, yep.
I would say all of the other presidential candidates didn't have yet a climate platform until he came in and pushed it. And everybody else knew that you now had to have one. And a lot of it was adopted into the Biden administration. And so worked with him and was a surrogate for him. And then when when he dropped out of the race and came into the Biden team, the team asked me to come run the climate surrogates efforts. So I wrangled all of the labor union heads, all of the former EPA administrators. It was all of the people who were just like your Avengers who were working on climate, like the movement elders. And that was great. And then when we won the election, those were good times, too short. And Nike called and said, hey, you want to come and join the private sector and help us figure out how do we do better here? So that's been what I've been up to.
But what a shift.
Yeah.
So always, grassroots, policy work, state level, policy work, national level. And then you're asked to come into the corporate world, sort of like what I went through earlier.
Yeah.
So what did that look like? How did you think about how do we match what Nike can do and needs to do with what the world needs?
One thing that I am so grateful for is I didn't start the other way. I'm so glad I started in the community and went into corporate, because as a corporate executive, most people who come into the space and are leaders in a global company, they came in through business school. They came in through supply chains management training. They never took a sociology class or ethnic studies class. And when I came in, I had a mindset already of how do you start with the outcomes that you want to get at? And how do you figure out who are the folks you need to build with and bring in? And how do you find what's in it for them?
So what did that look? Give us an example.
Yeah. So for instance, I built a project to invest in 125,000 women in India to have access to water. Now, why would Nike invest in women to have access to water? It sounds like a climate justice project, right? But what I said was, we're going to create a revolving loan, and how we're going to help women who are in an extended workforce who don't even work for us. They work for our manufacturers, but we're going to help them. Because if they actually save time, 2 hours a day in getting water, that allows for them to have more free time, and that allows for them to rest. Also, this was during COVID, and so if you have access to water, you can wash your hands and you're healthier. And guess what? We saw productivity levels increase. We saw recruitment and retention levels increase, which is not easy when you're fighting and competing against tech companies for employees and for your workforce. We saw our employees' morale skyrocketed. Employees were coming to me with just crying, so moved by the stories they were hearing. They were so proud of the work they were doing at the company. And they were volunteering their own hours gathering data. Beyond that, we saw our relationship with our manufacturers improve. So this is always, something important. You want to have good relationships with your manufacturers because, these are core relationships. They create our things. We saw that they knew now we were not only coming to them to be transactional, we were relational. And that made us even better partners. And then beyond that, our relationship with the president and the leaders of India, the prime minister, was so much better. And they now saw that they could come to us with other ideas and other things that they were working on. Now, I would say that given the age of tariffs and what we're seeing globally around geopolitics, this is even more important for companies to realize that this project didn't take very much and improved on so many other levels. And by the way, we had a lot of earned media around this, which oftentimes some of the things that companies spend the most amount of money on is brand and communications. So there's so many co-benefits around that. And I think that is exactly why we need to continue to build these alignments, right? I hear a lot of conversations today around, and I'm so excited for it, how do we work together? We gotta work together. We gotta bring our pennies together to make it grow and leverage and blend finance. We take for granted that people know how to do that. People don't. It's really hard for people to find what's in it for you and come to you with how can I help you actually succeed in your work and it actually is a mutual benefit. So I'm excited to hear this, and I will say we want to lean into how to do that.
It's about listening.
I have 5 C's.
Okay, let's hear.
Y'all got your notebooks ready? All right. We got to find common ground. We got to figure out how to make sure that first and foremost, I know what you're trying to do. I know what your interests are, what motivates you.
Yes.
And for a lot of companies, you guys know they're running a business. They're not a charity and they're not a foundation, but they do have overlaps. They do care about their supply chain resilience. Core now is business resilience. They got to make sure that their extended workforce can withstand climate disasters and floods and heat waves. In India, less than 10% of the people have access to ACs. We're dealing with some extreme weathers here. They want to know what are some of the things that they can do to ensure the stability of their supply chain.
Yep.
We got to make sure that we're working with community and not to community. We're not talking to them, that we're working with them. And we don't presume to know what they're talking about, right? And so I tell my leaders, get in the community. Get out there and talk to folks. Go and talk to folks. Go and talk to other companies. We built a partnership with it's called the Transform to Net Zero, with Starbucks, Microsoft, Google, HSBC, Mercedes-Benz, and we came together with a joint alignment around getting to net zero. And I created a working group on climate justice. And so many of us had never actually figured out what can we do. And the projects like the one I talked about in India, we can actually do and scale more. And we convened roundtables, brought Apple and others into a conversation to say, what are you doing? How can we leverage our funds together? And how can we bring community to the table to tell us what's useful, right? And then we got to make sure that we're bringing together our groups. We got to bring together our coalition, and we actually have to be in community together and really sit together and try to find ways to build. And finally, the last two I would say is capitalize it. Y'all, if you are holding purse strings, if you are in a company, if you are an investor, if you're a philanthropist, we got to capitalize the community in order for them to have the capacity needed to sit at the table, right? As I know right now, so many people across the board are just slammed. I just came back from the protests in Los Angeles, and a lot of people are fighting for their lives. They're fighting for their lives right now. And they want to be at the table with you. They just literally do not have capacity to carry one more thing. And so they need your help too in order for them to even show up to the table. I would say for us, we got to make sure too that don't just be creative with what capital means, right? Sometimes your capital may be actual dollars, and that's wonderful. But one of the things I did at Nike was I knew our capital was more than our dollars. We have a platform. We have an audience. We have a brand. And I brought in, I created the first ever climate justice fund. We called it People and Planet. At a time when nobody thought I could, because they knew my background. Everybody looked it up on LinkedIn. They're like, you're a climate justice advocate, so I don't know if your advocacy justice-y thing will fit in here. And I was like, give me a minute. and within a few years, we were able to create the first ever climate justice fund that moved millions of dollars into supporting communities. We created the community resilience program. And one of the projects that I supported was investing in communities in Los Angeles and in New York to be climate resilient. And yes. And I'm going to talk about this project for a little bit because it's so cool. We supported the Trust for Public Lands and Diane Regas, who looked at areas and topographies that were extremely hot. And within that, areas that actually could be ways to transform the communities. In New York, for instance, we looked at a school that had just the right amount of slope. And in this area, it's right on the edge of Chinatown. When it flooded, the entire community flooded. And when it was hot, nobody can go out and play because the concrete was so hot. You would actually get 10 degrees hotter as a result. And not just on the playground, but around the neighborhood because all of the concrete that was reverberating around it. And so because of the slope, what they were able to say is if we actually built a swimming pool size of a hole and you filled it up with filtration systems, you can actually, when it floods, you can actually capture the water and filter it so the water is cleaner going out into the pipes than it was coming in. And then beyond that, we put in sport courts, we planted trees, we made the entire playground available for the entire community. And that itself was a resource and great. We were able to give funds and resources to an organization. But what I did was say, what we should do is highlight this program on our social media and give them the access to our audience, right? And we posted them. They're still, unless something changed, they're still on social media. They're still on Instagram. And they were posted right after Megan Thee Stallion. And they had just as many likes as Megan Thee Stallion. And what I told the CEO there was, hey, make sure your website is available to get the millions of hits you're going to get right after we post you. And guess what? They were able to get so much online donors as a result. So be creative with what kind of capital you have. Make sure you're thinking creatively around how you engage folks. And as we wrap up, I will say, if you're looking for partners, I'm now bringing together the work that I have done with Van Jones, with Tom Steyer, with Nike, and I'm bringing the people together to look at how do we actually leverage our private capital to support communities. And so I'm moving that now in my own way. Yes.
Thank you. And with that, please join me in thanking Vien Truong for all she's done and for being with us here.
Thank you.